Hi everyone, and welcome to Module 1 of SWK 685. Today we're going to be looking at assessments, the role of the trauma responsive professional, and we're going to have an introduction into trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, which is TFCBT. So let's pick up where we left off in SWK 684, and that is pondering the question, how do you want to be remembered as a trauma-focused helping professional? So with every client, we have assessments and intake, right? And during this assessment time and during this intake time, we are gleaning and gathering information. The thing with that whole process of gathering that information is that it is ongoing. Like we are always collecting and gleaning information, right? So we're building this therapeutic relationship, which we do through that repetitive engagement in sessions with our clients. And while we're building that, we're gathering information about their trauma history and their symptoms. We're looking at how do they function within different domains of their life. And we're also assessing for a DSM-5 diagnosis, right? So because assessment is an ongoing thing, these also are fluid, right? So we might see some trauma history or trauma symptom present 3 or 4 sessions in that we did not have during the original intake or assessment. Also with diagnoses, insurance companies want to diagnoses like after your very first visit. And it's really difficult to give a diagnosis to someone after just an hour intake assessment. So just know that as you get to build that therapeutic relationship with that client, as you continue to listen to their story, observe their behaviors, get reports and observations from caretakers about their behaviors and from themselves, from self-reporting, those diagnoses are allowed to be changed. So the assessment that I use before engaging my client in TFCBT is the CRAFTS assessment. I do it before and I do it after. It is an assessment that has a numerical score attached to it. So this allows us to gauge before and after. So it gives us the ability to say, this modality works. This was their score before. This is their score now. The CRAFT looks at their cognitive functioning, which also touches on suicidality. We look at relationships with peers so we get an idea of their social skills. We look at their affect, which is mood. Can they soothe themselves? What is their tolerance of frustration or uncomfortable feelings or distress? What is their family situation like? What kind of attachment, good or bad, have they built with their families or caregivers? Have they experienced abuse? What are some of the trauma-related behaviors that either the client can self-report or the caregiver has observed and can report to us? And you see those listed there. And then also, what is that somatic functioning? We learned a lot about how our body expresses trauma and feels trauma when we looked at Body Keeps Score. And so this gives us an idea if our client is experiencing those things or not. Because TFCBT is utilized in children ages 3 to 18, the CRAFTS can be done in 2 different ways. So the client can self-report, but we also have an assessment through CRAFTS where the child's caregiver is able to also report all of these things for us. We also like to look at resilience factors. So what kind of agency does this youth have? Are they autonomous? Do they know that they can make decisions about their lives? And what decisions can they make about their lives? What is their self-esteem? What do they like or not like about themselves? Do they feel loved and valued? Do they have self-efficacy? Like, what can they do to make change happen? What are their external supports? Do they go to church? Are there certain persons that give them a lot of support that they can talk to? Do they have pets? And then what kind of affiliations do they have? So what's their circle of connections, right? We have these different levels of circle of supports and connections. So are they in after school groups, extracurricular activities, youth groups, and then who are the positive, safe people that are in their lives? There are many examples that you can use for your assessments for tools for trauma. Here are just a few of them. We do use the ACEs assessment and the resiliency questionnaire at my agency. We also do a psychosocial assessment when the client comes in and a psychiatric diagnostic evaluation. These assessments all have those same things as the craft, just in more detail. So when we are doing an assessment, we want to make sure that we create an environment of safety. And we do that not just by engaging, but by also having felt safety for the clients. So they have to feel that it's safe to build a therapeutic relationship with us. All right, so here's the best way that I can explain it. Assessments are so clinical, so sterile and cold. And when you have a client coming in that you're assessing for TFCBT, at least with the children I work with, they have been removed from bio parents, bio grandparents, and placed in state's custody and placed in foster care. So we know that either there has been a report made of neglect or abuse or witness domestic violence, something like that, and either it has already been substantiated or we're waiting for an investigation to substantiate that. So what I like to do is I know my assessments really, really well, so that when I sit down with my youth client and with their caregiver, the assessment is a conversation. It's just a conversation. And I always let my youth know that they don't have to tell me anything in my first assessment if they don't want to. They don't know me, right? I'm not going to come in and demand that they tell me their life story in an hour and in the first time they're meeting me. That's why it's important to remember that this assessment is an ongoing process as we build that therapeutic relationship. So in that therapeutic relationship, we need to empower them and honor them, right? If they don't tell me about their traumas when I try to ask them about their traumas in our first conversation, they're going to tell me about their traumas as we go through the process. So how can we establish safety with our clients? First, you can validate what this client has experienced and what roles each person has played in that process. I love this part about collaborating on goals and explaining the process. So when I develop a client's treatment plan, we do it together, right? I ask them, what would you like to work on? And sometimes they don't know. That's okay. Like we are trained and taught how to take a diagnosis, take an assessment, and coordinate a successful treatment plan. But they need to feel like they have agency in that plan. We also set up our physical spaces in our offices in such a way that they feel like they're in control. They can see the door. They have direct access to the door. And I always allow them to choose where they want to sit in the office. Confidentiality is explained all the time up front, but I ask my clients every session, do you have any questions you want to ask me today about what we're going to talk about? Oh, especially foster youth. Like they're always asking, like, do you have to tell my state worker about this? Are you going to tell my foster mom about this? You're going to tell my bio mom about this? So we go over confidentiality. We go over what we have to disclose as far as we have to warn if they're threatening to hurt or harm someone, and if they're threatening suicidality or self-harm. We have to talk about those too. We also talk about what they can and cannot do in therapy. So like different therapists have different comfortabilities with language. What kind of language are their kids allowed to use? What kind are they allowed to get up, move around? All kinds of things like that. I have tons of fidgets in my room. I have different areas to sit. The youth that I work with are allowed to use whatever language they need to use at that time to express themselves. I talk to my kids. Like I said, I have a conversation with my kids. I don't talk about my kids. I talk to them and include them in the conversation. You want to make sure that you're showing up and being present and feedback giving consistently. And then you're going to ask them for their feedback. So I'll do that a lot, especially if I'm challenging something or if I'm using like the technique of saying, so I hear you saying blah, 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 blah. That would make me think that maybe you feel this way. Is that right? And I'll be like, I can't read your mind. I can't see through your skull. So you have to tell me if I'm wrong. And they love that because, again, it gives them agency in their session. And then when we complete that initial assessment, we give that findings to the client and to the parent. And we talk about their strengths. We talk about their areas of growth. We talk about their treatment. And then we always want to make sure that we are giving the hope and encouragement like, hey, we're going to work through this. We're a team. You're in charge of your team, and we're here to support you. This is just a little bit of list of what strategies we can use, what resilience factors parallel that strategy, and then what ethical principle we have as social workers are connected to that resilience factor and that strategy. Honestly, these ethical principles over here, I use those a lot in every session. They really are foundation for how I engage and interact with my clients, my foster families, and my biological parents that I work with. So, oh, Cracker Jacks! I did not just know what happened there. Here we go. So, how do we tie this all together? Y'all, if you haven't had me before, you'll get to know that I like to keep my recordings real. Like, I'm a real person. I myself like that. And I want you to see that I'm a real person so that I'm approachable to you. Because if you need to get in contact with me or if you're struggling, I just want you to reach out. I'm just a human being. Okay. Assessment is ongoing. We talked about that. Like, it creates a foundation, and we can trust that as we build our therapeutic relationship, we will be given more information from our clients. We need to make sure that as we're facilitating assessments, that we considered how we're assessing for the trauma and we're creating a safe environment. We also need to remember that as a trauma-focused helping professional, it is so important to build that trusting relationship and that therapeutic alliance. I'm not kidding. If we don't do that, we will never, ever be privileged to gain the information that we need the client to share with us in order to assist them and give them the tools that they need to do the work that they have the power to do. Trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy is just one of many trauma-informed models, but it is evidence-based. All right, I know this is a lot for this first week, but it really is just a foundation, and then we'll get into the steps of TFCBT. Don't forget, we work through this class. You have to have a relationship with your client. Practice self-care, all right? It's 7 weeks. It's hard going. We're getting into the holidays. Things can be really, really stressful this time of year. So practice self-care. If you need, reach out to me. If you're like, I'm struggling, either you're overwhelmed, you're stressed, something you've read is just pushing some buttons for you, please, please, please email me. We can set up a time to FaceTime or whatever. Like, I am here as your resource. I just want this to be a fantastic semester. I love trauma-informed care. It's incredible. It's awesome. I love it. So I want to make sure that you all are getting everything out of it that you can. Please don't forget that the assignments for Module 1 are due on October 31st by 11:59. Halloween. Y'all might want to think about that. I know y'all probably have plans, so try to get it done early. You need to read chapters 2, 3, and 5 of the book that we have, and then there are some videos in Mod 1 also, and there is one activity that has a few questions to answer. If you are going to be unable to get it in on time, please contact me before 24 hours of the due date. If you need to review your syllabus to look at the rules and penalties for late assignments, please do so. Also, maybe start looking at the case study application and core assignments and all the requirements that are outlined in the syllabus. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. Totally look forward to working with each and every one of you. Please don't hesitate to reach out. Have an incredible week, and I'll talk to you next week.